My Disabled Husband Novel Chapter 8 Worth My Effort to Find Her. Aimee stared at her arm for a long time before pouting. She did this because she wanted to devote herself to medicine. Tea took her a long time to recover. Aimee hid the stuff and went into the bathroom to wash up. She couldn't let her skin be exposed, so she found a long-sleeved shirt and put it on. After she came to the dining room, she was seen by Camden and he asked, "Aimee, it's almost 40 degrees today. You're dressed like this. Don't you feel hot?" "Grandpa, I am not feeling hot," Aimee said. In fact, it was not supposed to be hot at home, but her body was so special that she couldn't feel the cold, but she couldn't do anything about the heat. She put a whole piece of ice patch on her back, which relieved her discomfort of being too hot from wearing long sleeves. And it was all because of Patrick. Aimee stirred the polenta in the bowl, saw that Camden had already had breakfast. So she put down the spoon, looked at Camden, and said, "Grandpa, there is something I want to discuss with you." "What is it?" asked Camden. "Here is what I plan to do. I want to try and heal Mr. Hayden's body, Grandpa," Aimee said. Camden was stunned for a moment when he heard the words, and then said, "Aimee, it's not that I don't trust you. I know you are a good doctor. It's just, for Pat's situation, I have sought out famous doctors from all over the world, but it did not work out. Aimee, I don't want to be disappointed again." Aimee pursed her lips, fully understanding Camden's thought. She said, "Grandpa, I don't want to tell you that I will definitely be able to cure Mr. Hayden. I just want to help him as a doctor. In this way, until you find a more capable doctor, I can guarantee Mr. Hayden's health will not deteriorate. His body will not be so uncomfortable, and it will be prepared for better treatment in the future." Camden nodded and looked at Aimee gratefully. "Aimee, you are willing to treat Pat. I'm really happy." Aimee smiled and said, "Grandpa, you know Mr. Hayden's resistance to doctor. I'm afraid he will be very angry if I reveal my profession." Originally, Aimee could treat Patrick secretly, but it was not a secret that she was a doctor. In some places, Camden's cooperation was needed. Therefore, after a long struggle, Aimee decided to make it clear with Camden first. Camden also understood Aimee's intentions, nodded, and said, "Okay, let's tell Pat today. If he dares to lose his temper with you, I will help you deal with him." Aimee smiled and thanked Camden. "Thank you, Grandpa, then I will go to work first. When I come back in the evening, I will study Mr. Hayden's case and make a treatment plan for him." Camden nodded and watched Aimee go out in relief. A butler, Riley, said, "Mr. Hayden, I didn't expect Miss Reed to be quite caring." Camden glanced at him and said, "She's not the same as the Reeds. She's worth my effort to find her as your wife." "Mr. Hayden, your move is too risky. What if the Reed family sends another lady over?" Riley said. "You still don't know them well enough. They are afraid of losing good things. Marrying Pat means living a life of a widow. They are not willing to do this kind of thing by themselves," Camden said. Riley sighed and said no more. Luckily, things were going smoothly according to Camden's plan, which was the best out of the worst. Aimee was working in the outpatient department today. She had been diagnosing patients all day long. She hastily ate a piece of bread at noon, without taking a sip of water. During her lunch break, she spent all her time researching the treatment plan for Patrick. It was finally time to get off work, and the last patient was sent away. Aimee took off her white coat and rushed out of the hospital. She was hailing a car on her mobile phone when a car stopped in front of her. The window on the driver's seat was lowered. The man poked his head out and asked Aimee, "Dr. Reed, where are you going?" "I'll drive you there." "No. Dr. Thomas, my car will be here soon," Aimee said. She raised her mobile phone, indicating that the car she had ordered would arrive soon. Liam Thomas seemed to be stubborn with Aimee today, insistently wanting to let Aimee take his car. "Dr. Reed, we are colleagues. Don't always reject people like this. I just give you a ride, and I won't do anything to you." Aimee didn't want to have too many words with him, and now she was even annoyed. She said, "Dr. Thomas, I'm really in a hurry. I won't bother you. I'll go first. Bye." Coincidentally, the car she ordered arrived, and Aimee got into the car without looking back. After telling the driver her destination, she then bowed her head and typed something on her mobile phone. the driver kept checking the road conditions, and soon realized that a black Land Rover was following them. He asked aloud, "Hey, young girl, did you quarrel with your boyfriend? The car behind has been following us." When he parked the car just now and saw them talking, he naturally thought that they were very familiar. Plus, they were a handsome man and a beautiful woman. He automatically regarded them as a couple. Aimee turned her head when she heard this and saw Liam's car following them. She tapped a few times on her mobile phone, and after sending a message, she said to the driver, "He's not my boyfriend. He's just a colleague. Maybe he should go this way too." Hearing what Aimee said, the driver sensed that her tone was calm, without any anger, and she really didn't look like she had quarreled with her boyfriend. Knowing he was overthinking, he said nothing more. However, when turning, their car had just turned around when there was a violent crash happening from behind. The driver subconsciously looked in the rearview mirror and saw that the Land Rover collided with a pickup truck. The tires of the truck were still turning in place. It seemed that the brakes had failed, and the car body was dented by the Land Rover. The situation was tragic. Aimee naturally also heard the voice behind, but she didn't have slightest curiosity and only focused on her mobile phone screen. The driver originally wanted to have a conversation with her, complaining about the tragedy of the truck. Unexpectedly, Aimee was clearly a girl with internet addiction and only immersed in her mobile phone. The driver pouted, feeling a little bit annoyed. Aimee looked at the message on the phone. It was a conversation she had with a person named Matilda Duncan. "Aimee, stop him, Matilda. The fly is caught, bring me the money." Healing My Disabled Husband Novel Chapter 9. What does it have to do with me? Aimee used the apps on the cell phone expressionlessly, and the next second, she transferred $800,000 to Matilda's account. Matilda happily replied, "Thank you, rich woman." Aimee didn't reply and finally put away her cell phone. She really had no attachment to this woman who charged a fee for anything she did for her. The car also happened to stop at the door of the Hayden's mansion. Aimee opened the door and got out of the car, not noticing the shocked expression on the driver's face. Living in such luxurious house, she still had to take taxi here. The driver only felt that the world of the wealthy was beyond his comprehension. After taking another look at the house that he would never be able to live in, the driver started the car and drove away. Aimee came back late today, and Camden was still waiting for her to have dinner with her. This touched her very much, and she had a little more affection for Camden. In the Reed family, no matter how early she left and how late she returned, no one would ask her if she was hungry. Instead, they would just hope that she died outside. Looking at the table full of dishes at this moment, she could clearly see there were 2 dishes that they were made specially for her, and Aimee was even more moved. Camden saw that she hadn't picked up the tableware for a long time, so he asked, "What's wrong? Don't you like the food?" "No, Grandpa, I'm just too hungry. I don't know which to eat first," Aimee said. When Camden heard this, he served her a bowl of soup by himself and said, "Then you have to have the soup to warm your stomach first. The more hungry you are, the less anxious you should be. Come on, try this chicken soup first. Riley cooked it himself, and it tastes very good." Aimee took the soup and drank it in small sips, and her felt a ticking in her nose. This was the first person other than the teacher to tell her to feed her stomach. When the chicken soup flowed down her throat, the warm current rushed into her body, making Aimee's whole heart seem to be filled. Hunger was satisfied. Aimee looked at Camden and said, "Grandpa, my working hours are flexible, so don't wait for me to have dinner in the future." Needless to ask, she also knew that Camden's mealtime must be fixed. He had already worried enough about Patrick. If he still waited for her to eat, even his own daily routine will be violated. Aimee really felt sorry. But Camden said, "I'm in good health, and besides, I'm very happy that you can have dinner with me." Aimee understood what Camden was thinking, so she said nothing more. After dinner, Aimee went to the study. Patrick's medical records were all placed there, and Camden specially asked people to sort out the documents for Aimee to come back to read at night. She went through the records quickly, noting Patrick's various symptoms, as well as the various drugs that the doctor prescribed for him. Not too good nor bad. From the time of the accident until now, in Patrick's case, The physical signs had not changed much. Fortunately, it was better than Aimee's expectation, and there was no hint of deterioration. That was to say, although the instrument had been altered deliberately by someone, it would not be able to affect Patrick in a short time. This gave Aimee a sigh of relief, so that she could let go of some of her concerns and treat Patrick in a more direct and stimulating way. After reading the documents, Aimee went to Patrick's room. She was still accompanied by Camden. After all, she had to tell Patrick about her job. With Camden around, Aimee could let Camden stand in front of her. She didn't want to face Patrick's anger. Camden knew today's goal. After entering the room, he said to Patrick without beating around the bush, "Pat, I forgot to tell you before, but Aimee is actually a doctor." Patrick's expression changed from indifferent to anger after hearing the word doctor. He was about to speak when he heard Camden say, "But Pat, I didn't call Aimee to treat your illness. I just want to tell you that Aimee is very busy. She will be called back temporarily by the hospital. When you can't find her, don't think she doesn't value you. She's just busy." Patrick looked at his grandfather speechlessly, as if saying, "What of it? What does it have to do with me? Do you think I'm someone who would look for her?" Camden ignored Patrick's expression and continued, "Pat, I don't care what you do to other doctors, but Aimee is your wife. You can't lose your temper with her." Patrick was about to laugh angrily at Camden's words. Knowing what profession he hated most now, he still wanted to find him such a wife and asked him to treat her well. He looked at Aimee's face and saw her innocent and pure face, as if what Camden was saying had nothing to do with her. Patrick narrowed his eyes and said, "Since you're a doctor, doctors are always benevolent. Don't you want to come and treat me, my wife?" Aimee blinked her eyes, looked calm, but her heart was throbbing. She said something similar in front of this man last night. Although she was sure that he was asleep at that time, why would she feel so strongly at this moment that Patrick deliberately said this to her because she said the same things to him last night? She wasn't ready to be discovered yet. After being dazed for a few seconds, Aimee murmured, "Mr. Hayden, you think too highly of me. I'm just an ordinary doctor, and my medical skills are not superb. It's okay to do auxiliary nursing for you. For treatment, please leave it to experts." Patrick looked at Aimee silently, but the expression on his face told Aimee that he had seen through her, but he didn't expose her. He just looked at her quietly and heard her talking nonsense. Aimee compressed her lips and complained in her heart that this man, who was lying on the bed, was really annoyed by being so insidious and cunning. She silently decided not to come to Patrick's room tonight because she always felt that she had been exposed. Anyway, she still needed to prepare for the official start of treatment. There were several medicines missed, and she had to ask someone to buy them for her. Patrick's gaze was always on Aimee's face, and he naturally captured all her expressions. He titled his head to look at Camden and said, "Grandpa, since my wife is a doctor, why don't I let her be in charge of my illness in the future? Those experts, I think, are just quack doctors with no real skills. They just have the ability to ask for money." Camden had been silently observing Patrick and Aimee just now. Seeing that Patrick was not unhappy that Aimee was a doctor, he was already very happy in his heart. At this moment, hearing what Patrick said, Camden didn't hesitate at all, and agreed directly, "Then you have to promise me to cooperate with Aimee's treatment." Healing My Disabled Husband Novel Chapter 10 If He Can Stand Up. Aimee stood aside without saying a word. She was really speechless at this point because she never expected things would turn out that way. Obviously, she asked Camden to help her and let her assist Patrick as a doctor, just to make it easier for her to start treatment in the future. Why at this moment she felt that Patrick was setting her up and letting her jump into it. She just told Patrick that she was mediocre and ordinary doctor. If she cured him later, wouldn't that prove she was wrong? At first, she was thinking that she would help and treat him secretly, and then she would say that those experts hired with a lot of money were so eminent that there was such a medical miracle. In that way, she wouldn't have broken her promise to her teacher. Now, Patrick put her in a dilemma directly, making her have to rethink whether to cure him or not. She couldn't make a decision right away, but only knew that at this moment, at this second, she didn't want to see him at all. After finishing speaking, he looked at Patrick again and said, "Pat, take a good rest. I will come to see you tomorrow." Patrick nodded, took a meaningful look at Aimee, and let them leave. After making sure they were back in their respective rooms, Patrick said to Trace, "Go and check out all the surgeries she's performed and see how her skills are." Trace went to do it right away, but he didn't understand why Patrick even had to check this. After Aimee returned to the room, a rare but angry expression appeared on her face. She grabbed the pillow and hammered it twice, and muttered angrily, "Bastard, just be paralyzed for the rest of your life, making trouble out of nothing while lying down. What if he can stand up?" Sitting on the bed angrily, Aimee thought of the look Patrick gave her before leaving. It was just pissing her off. Aimee titled her head and fell on the bed, and cursed Patrick with all the abusive expressions she knew. At this moment, her phone rang. It was a message. Aimee took out the phone and saw that it is from Matilda, the money grubber. "Matilda, I got the medicines, give me the money." Aimee felt like she had a headache. Why did she get entangled by this vampire? If she hadn't been rich, she would have gone bankrupt in minutes by this unscrupulous businesswoman. After transferring the money to her, Aimee asked, "How long will it take?" "Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Come to Nisrael on time." "Will it be delivered to you, or will you come and pick it up yourself?" Matilda said. The corner of Aimee's mouth twitched. The bad woman really won't miss any chance to make money. Without hesitation, she replied, "Send it here." "Tiesk, I wanted to save you some money," Matilda said hypothetically. "You're indeed a rich woman. Very generous." Aimee resisted the urge to roll her eyes. After dealing with her for so many years, she knew how she would behave. Even if she picked it up in person, Matilda can come up with a reason for reasonable charges, so why should she spend the money and effort? After making an appointment at the time and place, Aimee stopped chatting with Matilda. She got up from the bed, took out the set of mini instruments she had made, and began to study it seriously. Originally, without the instruments, she could have cured Patrick, but it would take longer and the process would make Patrick more painful. However, now she had researched and understood the principles of these instruments and knew how to use them to their maximum effect, so as to provide the strongest assistance to Patrick's body. In this way, combined with the medical skills her teacher taught her and the medicines Matilda brought for her, she could make Patrick recover within a month. But in this way, she would apologize to her teacher. Aimee became more and more melancholy, staring at the instruments with her chin held by her hands. As early as when she was taken back to Reed family at the age of 7, the day before she said goodbye to her teacher, he told her seriously that she must hide all her abilities and all the things in her body that were different from ordinary girls. She can't let other people know that she had the night vision she was not afraid of. The cold, and she had a photographic memory. Aimee knew that the ordinary was innocent, while the talented would be framed. She must show clumsiness in order to survive safely. But she was a doctor, and this was her lifelong passion. She couldn't do nothing after she knew she can cure him. Pursing her lips, Aimee said to herself, "I will violate this one time, please forgive me." At 8 o'clock the next morning, Aimee came out of the hospital and went to a cafe. As soon as she entered the door, she saw a glamorous woman in a red dress waving towards her, with gazes looking her body from countless people around her. Amazement, admiration, jealousy, suspicion, all kinds of emotions from other people did not affect her at all. Matilda smiled brightly, and after Aimee took her seat, she pushed the Americano in front of her. No sugar, no milk, refreshing. Aimee glanced at the coffee and said, "I'm so clear-headed, so I don't need the coffee." Especially this kind of black coffee. For Aimee, it was a disaster at all. She couldn't bear such a bitter thing to enter her throat. It was simply an insult to her taste buds. Matilda pursed her lips and said, "I don't think your mind is so clear." She leaned forward and said in a voice that only Aimee could hear, "Otherwise, why would you be so crazy, spending nearly 10 million just to buy such a small bottle of something?" Aimee said, "A quarter of this is your commission." The implication was, if this woman wasn't so greedy for money, how could she paid a sky-high price? Matilda leaned back and said, "It's reasonable for you to spend the money because of our relationship, but it's the one you bought the medicine for. What's your relationship with him? Is it worth your money? Aimee held the bottle, then her gaze fell on the white pill inside for a long time. Yeah. What was the relationship between her and Patrick that she spent so much money for him? Aimee suddenly felt sorry for herself for spending so much money. It was really unworthy. Matilda looked at Aimee's expression, smiled, and said, I'm relieved seeing you with this expression. At least you still know how to care about your money. Otherwise, I would think you covet his appearance and you're just willing to spend the money. Aimee raised her eyes, really wanting to cover the woman's mouth. Matilda laughed even more presumptuously and said, How about I give you a trick? I think he is quite rich. You might as well rip him off sharply a few times while he is lying still and can't move. Aimee thought for a while and decided that it was too inhuman to do so. When she thought of the scene of Patrick lying on the bed and giving her money, she felt a little pitiful for no reason. Putting the bottle into her bag, Aimee stopped chatting with Matilda and got up to leave the cafe. Healing My Disabled Husband Novel Chapter 11 Getting Someone to Protect Aimee. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Aimee entered Patrick's room. She walked to Patrick's bed and injected the medicine that had been prepared before into Patrick's infusion bottle with a needle. She had seen the liquid medicine in Patrick's infusion bottle before, and she knew the ingredients and efficacy very well, so after getting the medicine that Matilda bought for her, she dispensed it. And it was mixed with the medicine that Patrick being infused, forming a perfect fit. However, Aimee's action frightened Trace and the others. Trace, don't you want to arrest her? If she keeps messing around like this, Mr. Hayden will die. Trace was also very anxious, but he really didn't dare to act rashly without hearing Patrick's instructions. He could only stare at Aimee through the screen, hoping she would not do anything strange and hurt him. Otherwise, he would kill her with his own hands. Aimee didn't know that she was being watched. After injecting the liquid medicine, she hid the needle tube in her pocket, and then took out a wrench. This time, Trace and the others gasped in fright. Even if they had seen countless dangerous scenes, Trace still felt that Aimee was a bit of bold. Aimee walked up to the instrument she had pressed before, glanced at Patrick on the bed, and then, like a thief, moved the instruments bit by bit. The junction box at the back was exposed, and Aimee squatted down and unscrewed the 6th screw on it with the wrench. Trace and the others were dumbfounded. She looked weak and slender, but can easily unscrew them. In order not to make a sound, Aimee hid all the unscrewed screw in her pocket, and the removed baffle was also held in her arms. Then, Aimee fiddled with it for a long time, reconnecting the circuit which was manipulated by others. Aimee was so absorbed in restoring the instrument that she didn't notice at all that the eyes of the man who was supposed to be sleeping had opened. Aimee cannot be seen from his line of sight, but there was a faint cold light in his eyes. Even Trace and the others behind the screen felt the cold aura suddenly, and someone even turned up the heat silently. After Aimee connected the wires, she got up from the ground holding the baffle. After operating on the console, she smiled with satisfaction. Almost as soon as Aimee was done, Patrick felt a tingling sensation in his neck. This was the first time he can feel pain since the accident. Patrick let out an uncontrollable sigh, with brows furrowed. Aimee heard the sound, moved over lightly, and reached out to adjust a few patches for Patrick. The expression on her face was very gratifying. The medicinal liquid had already taken effect in Patrick's body. Coupled with the stimulation of the instrument, Patrick could feel the pain, which meant that the situation was more optimistic than she expected. Aimee took a tissue, wiped off the sweat oozing from Patrick's forehead, and muttered softly, "It seems your body is not bad. Maybe you can stand up earlier." Patrick was so surprised by the sudden pain that he couldn't breathe steadily, but when he heard Aimee's whisper, his chest heaved even more uncontrollably. So, this woman, who sneaked into his room these few nights, wanted to cure him. If this happened at any other time, Patrick would definitely sneer at Aimee's intention. However, he had already felt the pain, just now, which was enough to make him regain hope compared to the time when he had never felt any sensation before. Patrick's lips were tight, and he didn't rush to open his eyes. He suddenly wanted to see how Aimee was going to treat him. Different from the previous few times when Aimee just sneaked in, observed him, and then left tonight. She was always by the bed, watching Patrick's situation at any time. It wasn't until it was about to dawn that Aimee walked back to the instrument, restored the circuit to its original appearance, installed the baffle back, and even the positions of the patches on Patrick's body were restored by her, completely becoming the way it started. After Aimee left, Trace rushed in recklessly, but met Patrick's hawk-like eyes directly. "Mr. Hayden, are you okay?" Trace said. Patrick said, "Go get the pill bottle and test it." "Yes," Trace said. Patrick didn't tell Trace that he could feel the pain, and he heard what Aimee said to him. Although he had doubts about whether Aimee can cure him, for Patrick right now, he didn't want more people to know that Aimee was the one who might heal him. Before he found the person who harmed him, Patrick had made a silent decision. He wanted to hide this matter well so that no one would notice what Aimee was capable. Patrick called Trace to get close to him and whispered in his ear, "Let people protect Aimee. Don't let more people know what happened last night. From now on, the person in charge at night will be the same." Trace nodded, and after receiving the order he left the room. Patrick moved his neck. Strangely enough, the pain disappeared again and he became an unconscious crippled again.